Hello, I'm Charlie Law. Today I'm going to be telling you about the mini course we built over the summer called Cognitive Presence in Online Education, Theory and Practice. Here's a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about today. First, I'll tell you a little bit more about the course. Then I'll go into some specifics about the course design and how we used the community of inquiry model to design this course. Then I'll talk a little bit about the course results and some personal reflections that we have from the course. So the course was designed with 3 modules. Module 0 had an introduction and course overview, and I'll show you this in a few minutes. Module 1 had cognitive presence theory and practice, and then Module 2 included information for best practices for cognitive presence. Each of the second 2 modules, modules 1 and 2, had initially the same information: an introduction, learning objectives, lecture, readings and YouTube videos, a discussion question, an assignment, and a concept check quiz. That changed a little bit as the course progressed. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So here you can see what was involved in Module 0. We had the course introduction, some course expectations, our grading policy. We had a section where we told the students a little bit about ourselves, the Meet Your Instructor section, and we included a section for students to introduce themselves. Here you can see a screenshot for Module 1, and it has all the same information I told you about a few moments ago: the introduction, the learning objectives, and so on. And now I'm going to take just a little bit of time to go into the course and show you in real time what that looks like. Here we are on the course landing page, and I've put this into student view so you could see what the students would see. And you could see the title of the course, and then students would scroll down here and they would have some course summary information along with the syllabus. I'll just go ahead and click on the syllabus now so you can see what that looked like, even though I'll talk about that in a little bit. So you have the course syllabus, very standard. We have the instructor's contact information and our virtual office hours, our attendance policies, course description, learning objectives, and so on. And then we also include down here a summary of all of the different assignments and how students will be graded. So here you can see the information on the weekly discussions, the group assignments, and the concept check quizzes. Give a very brief little overview of how the points break out, and then after some additional course policies, we talk about due dates. Those are all listed right here, and other academic information. Finally, we do also include this lesson schedule for our mini course with the topic, the required readings, and the videos that are required for students to see. All right, so that's the syllabus. Now, going back here, we'll go ahead and go over to modules here. And you can see I showed you this screenshot earlier, and I'll just kind of show you a little bit more. The course introduction, and it's just a very brief introduction of what the course is about. Next, the expectations we had for the students enrolled in the course. The grading policy, and this was on the syllabus as well, but we thought it would be important to basically cut and paste and put it in here as well. And then some of the important stuff that I'll talk about more in a little bit is the Meet Your Instructions section, where we talk about some of our educational background and what we're doing, what we enjoy, and a little bit of personal information regarding hobbies and so on. And then the final section in M0 is the student introduction section, where they're asked to provide a little bit of information about themselves. So go ahead and go back to modules now, and I can show you some of the other things from Module 1. So going over here, if students click on this introduction, it gives them just a brief overview of what they're going to be learning about in Module 1. And from there, the learning objectives, these are the same learning objectives that were listed in the syllabus. And then you have the lecture from Module 1. And welcome to our mini course on cognitive presence. In this first module, you will learn about Piaget's cognitive development theory and how it applies to cognitive presence. You'll also learn about some best practice recommendations for increasing. That's the lecture that they were asked to watch, followed by readings required and recommended, and videos. And then you have the discussion question here, and I'm going to talk about this later as well, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. The assignment, again, I'll talk about this later in the presentation. And then finally, the concept check quiz that students could take. They had unlimited number of times they could take it. You can see it's 4 questions. So there's the modules. Everything else in here, pretty much you could find through the modules, the discussions, the assignments, the quizzes, grades, people, and so on. And the other thing I'll show you here, because I'll be talking about it later in the presentation, is the announcements page. You can see we have a couple announcements in here, and then we also do have, well, it doesn't show it because access is denied, but we do have some communication that occurred through the messenger part of Canvas. As I mentioned, the rest of the presentation is going to be structured around the community of inquiry model. So the first element I will discuss is teacher presence. So there are several ways that teacher presence was included in the course. In Module 0, we had the instructor introductions, and a link to the syllabus was on our homepage. I showed you that already. And the teacher presence was also maintained through the announcement, the messages, and responses to student work. I already showed you this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but both instructors in the course gave some information about themselves. And I already covered the syllabus, so I will go through this very quickly. All right, so here you can see an example of a course announcement that was made. This was the initial announcement welcoming students to the course, telling them a little bit about what to expect, letting them know that Module 1 is open so they could begin work. And I think importantly, you can see in bold that it says email me if you have any questions. So I offer the opportunity for students to communicate with me if they have any questions about what to do in Module 1. Also, we use messages in the Canvas area to communicate with students. So here you can see a message that we sent to students, thanking them for their strong work in the Module 1. And then I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the presentation, but letting them know that there's been a change to the course, specifically in some of the social presence areas that we had hoped to create in the course. Another way that we maintained teacher presence was through responses to student discussions. Here you can see my response to one of the student discussion posts that they made in Module 1. All right, so next is social presence. And this is an area that we struggled with, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But there are some bright spots that I want to illustrate. All right, so here you can see the different ways the course tries to establish social presence. So we have the students introduce themselves, and we have a discussion question each one of the modules, and the students were supposed to read each other's reply and respond. And then with our assignments, initially we wanted them to work with a partner, and in the first module create a Kahoot, in the second module create an infographic, and I'll talk about those in just a second. All right, so student introductions. This was in Module 0, and what we asked students to do was just kind of introduce themselves, tell us about their academic background, why they're taking the class, one thing that everyone can remember them by, where they are located, and we did include something that says if they like, they can feel free to include a picture. Here is a discussion question. So this is again Module 1. It says in this module you learned about the community of inquiry theory and the element of cognitive presence. Please answer the following questions and make sure you reply to at least one of your classmates' original posts. So again, we're trying to establish that social presence by having them interact on the discussion board. This is another way that we tried to create social presence, but it didn't work, and I'll get into why it didn't work very shortly. But here's the example from Module 1. We asked them to create a Kahoot. And here, they're supposed to go to the website, the Kahoot website, and create a 5-question Kahoot that they could share. Now, what they were supposed to do is submit the Kahoot online and then answer at least one or two other people's, like participate in one or two other people's Kahoot quizzes. And we changed that. The announcement I showed you previously changed that because we had low enrollment. We were unable to have students pair up. In fact, we only had 2 people in the course. So if they partnered to create a Kahoot, there'd be no one else that they could take their quiz. So instead we changed it to an individual assignment, which is unfortunate because that took away some of the social presence that we're trying to establish. All right, moving on to cognitive presence. This is the third area we tried to structure the course with. And there were several ways we did this. I showed you already on the website with lectures, journal articles, YouTube videos, and concept check quizzes. So the lectures, both modules had lectures. Already kind of showed you the lecture from the first module, and students were asked to watch the lectures and listen to the lectures. They're also, at least in Module 1, asked to read journal articles. And here you can see there are 2 journal articles they were asked to read. I'm not going to show you those because it's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation. But they are academic journals, and that's something that was a little bit of a problem because it was a little bit too difficult for students to read. They also were asked to watch some YouTube videos. And you can see here are some of the examples. And in this case, I'm going to show you one of the videos that we asked students to watch. So here you can see the video that they were asked to watch, and I'm not sure.
Welcome to the Center for Teaching and Learning's video series on the community of inquiry. In this video, we'll be looking at cognitive presence. Cognitive presence is the extent to which the participants in any particular configuration of a community of inquiry are able to construct meaning through sustained communication. And this is about communicating to students the purpose of the activities in a course. The phrase objectives and outcomes are unfamiliar and confusing to students. On the administrative side, we understand how to provide purpose to course activities. How do we explain them to our students? Do they understand how the items listed on a syllabus connect with individual activities and assessments? Do they understand what they're supposed to get out of an assignment? Or do they see it as just something to complete for a grade? This may be one of the most challenging parts of the community.
So the video we just looked at went on for another 5 or 6 minutes. And there were a few of those that students could watch. Again, they were voluntary for students to watch, but they provided a lot of good information. All right, finally, students are asked to complete a concept check quiz. Here you can see one of the 4 questions that was on the first module's concept check quiz. And each quiz had was graded 4 points total. All right, so for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened through the course, the good and the bad, and some of my personal reflections on what I would do different next time. So I'll show you some samples of course student work, so you can get a good feel for what it looked like, some of the feedback samples or examples of the feedback we provided, talk a little bit about the level of student engagement and teacher engagement, and then student evaluation of the course. So here you can see an example of one of the students' answer to a discussion question. You can see it's a little bit short. It does answer the question, but it's not quite as deep as we had hoped. And here you can see the instructor feedback. you can see it's positive and reinforces the student's participation, but tries to go a little bit deeper into the topic. In fact, if you look at the last couple sentences, it says, how do you think posing a problem helps promote critical thinking? How can you do that in an online environment? And do you think that having a discussion board such as this one can help? So trying to establish and create a back and forth dialogue with the students through the discussion. It didn't work. There was no response to the questions, but it was something that we tried to do. Now here's just a screenshot of what the Kahoot that a student created. So this is one of the questions. You can see, what is the following is not part of the community of inquiry model? And this is again five questions. And one of the things that we did not do well in this was give feedback to assignments. And you can see the feedback we gave here. Nice job. I enjoyed your quiz. Think you asked some great questions. It was timely, the first feedback there, but it was not specific and it was not valuable for the students. It didn't really give them any kind of information on their performance. Student engagement was a problem. Here you can see the two students we had enrolled in the course. The first student spent about 48 minutes total on the Canvas website, and the second student was a little bit better with 1 hour and 14 minutes on the course website. So student engagement was very low, and that's one of the problems that we encountered. I do think one of the issues was with the course itself, and in fact I did interview one of those two individuals, and she said that the journal articles were way too difficult to read. So that was something that I didn't anticipate, but should have, that students who are not coming from an education background and don't really have the same level of knowledge we have may have difficulty reading those journal articles. But she did say the YouTube videos were great, so that was good. This, the second bullet, too much to do in a week, that's something that we were concerned with going into the course, and we did receive feedback throughout the course from you all that maybe it was a little bit too much work, so that was a problem with it as well. She said it was not very much fun because there were only a couple people, so the discussions didn't really get going and couldn't really do those assignments. In fact, she said that the assignments were a little bit overwhelming for one person to do. She had never heard of Kahoot and had never put together an infographic before. So she got overwhelmed, and actually the person I interviewed didn't do either of the assignments. But on a positive note, she did say the discussions were very interesting. So although she wasn't engaged in a lot of the back and forth that we had hoped, she did think the questions were interesting, and she did enjoy that part. All right, finally, some of my own personal reflections and reactions. These were some of the struggles with the course. I've mentioned several times there was low enrollment and low participation. And I think that led to some problems with communication. It was all one-way communication. The students did not communicate with me at all. So it wasn't very effective in that area as well. So what went well and what didn't? What went well? I think the course design and preparation was really strong. I think we put together a good course, but I don't think the course was the appropriate level for what we were trying to accomplish with people who were beginners in the career, in the topic. The technology worked well. Everything, I think we did a really good job putting it on Canvas and making everything look nice, and the consistency between the two modules. And I think the first week's discussion was strong. Both students answered the discussion questions and there were replies, and it got off to a good start. Not so well, the student enrollment. We were only able to get 2 people, and that was a problem. And I think partly because of that student enrollment and some of the other problems I mentioned, the student participation was pretty low. And then finally, there are some problems getting Module 2 up and running. It wasn't really live for the students until a couple days into Module 2. So that may have caused problems with them participating in that second week. All right, so what would I do differently? First of all, I would have less work in the course. I think it was way too much for people who had no background in the field, and way too much for people who were doing this voluntarily as a favor to me over a 2-week period. I would provide better feedback. I think I did a good job with the discussion feedback, but I should have, and I would in the future, be more interactive with the students enrolled. That includes that third bullet there, more communication and check-ins. I think that, I'm not sure, but I wonder if I had checked in with the students more consistently if they would have participated more. I waited until it was too late. I sent a message in the second module that they hadn't completed all the work in the first module. And then I think it was too late. So checking in with them when they were just a little bit late with their work would have been better. And I would do that in the future. And I think more positive reinforcement would have created more motivation for the students to work on the assignments and the discussion. The feedback we provided in the discussions was good, but for the assignments it was not strong. So I would definitely have more positive feedback in the future. Well, this concludes my presentation. I hope that you found it interesting, and I wish good luck to everybody else who's presenting.